All right. Welcome to this live poetry reading. I never have I never have my lights set on just right. They don't have a preview on this thing. I got to turn it on and then set it. Anyway, we'll go with this. So we're going to read some Walt Whitman to start off with. And it's called A Clear Midnight from 1881. This is thy hour, O soul, thy free flight into the wordless, away from books, away from art, the day erased, the lesson done. Thee fully forth emerging, silent, gazing, pondering the themes thou lovest best, night, sleep, death, and the stars. Walt Whitman, A Clear Midnight. Here's a noiseless, patient spider. A noiseless, patient spider I marked where on a little promontory it stood isolated, marked how to explore the vacant, vast surrounding. It launched forth filament, filament, filament out of itself, ever unreeling them, ever tirelessly speeding them. And you, O my soul, where you stand, surrounded, detached in measureless oceans of space, ceaselessly musing, venturing, throwing, seeking the spheres to connect them, till the bridge you will need be formed, till the ductile anchor hold, till the gossamer thread you fling catch somewhere, O my soul. A noiseless, patient spider. Walt Whitman. Some Emily Dickinson. This is my letter to the world that never wrote to me, the simple news that nature told with tender majesty. Her message is committed to hands I cannot see. For love of her, sweet countrymen, judge tenderly of me. A curious cloud surprised the sky. 'Twas like a sheet with horns. The sheet was blue, the antlers gray. It almost touched the lawns. So low it leaned, then statelier drew and trailed like robes away. A queen adown a satin aisle had not the majesty. Rest at night. Rest at night the soul from shining. Nature and some men rest at noon. Some men, while nature and the sun go on. Where ships of purple gently toss on seas of daffodil, fantastic sailors mingle, and then the wharf is still. Some Emily Dickinson. About a little Mary Oliver. This is from Owls and Other Fantasies by Mary Oliver. Wild geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. The Loon on Oakhead Pond by Mary Oliver. Cries, oh, sorry. The loon on Oakhead Pond cries for 3 days in the gray mist, cries for the north it hopes it can find, plunges and comes up with a slapping pickerel, blinks its red eye, cries again. Every afternoon and wait to hear it. You sit a long time, quiet under the thick pines, in the silence that follows, as though it were your own twilight, as though it were your own vanishing song. Here is a little owl who lives in the orchard. Little owl who lives in the orchard. His beak could open a bottle, and his eyes, when he lifts their soft lids, go on reading something just beyond your shoulder. Blake, maybe, or the Book of Revelation. Never mind that he eats only the black smocked crickets and dragonflies if they happen to be out late over the ponds, and of course the occasional festal mouse. Never mind that he is only a memo from the offices of fear. It's not size, but surge that tells us when we're in touch with something real. And when I hear him in the orchard fluttering down the little aluminum ladder of his scream, when I see his wings open like two black ferns, a flurry of palpitations as cold as sleet rackets across the marshlands of my heart like a wild spring day. Somewhere in the universe, in the gallery of important things, the babyish owl, ruffled and rakish, sits on its pedestal. Dear dark dapple of plush. A message, reads the label, from that mysterious conglomerate, Oblivion and Co. The hooked head stares from its blouse of dark, feathery lace. It could be a valentine. Mary Oliver. What's up, Kim? How's it going? Hope you're having a good night. Continuing with the bird theme in Mary Oliver, in lieu of a request from anyone. Here is Wrens. Here I go into the wide gardens of wastelands, blue glass, clear glass, and other rubbishes blinking from the dust, from the fox tracks among the roots and risings of buttercups, Joe Pye honeysuckle, the queen's lace, and her blue sailors, the little wrens, have carried 100 sticks into an old rusted pail, and now they are singing in the curtains of leaves. They are fluttering down to the bog. They are dipping their darling heads down to wet their whistles. How happy they are to be diligent at last. Foolish birds. John, I do too. I love bird watching. Here is Some Herons. Now, when I was growing up, we had a little pond in the backyard, and a lot of mornings, especially in the summer, I would see a great blue heron sitting at the edge of the pond, still as a statue, and he would just sit there. And it could be a while, and then all of a sudden he would move, fast as lightning, and come up with a fish and eat it and fly off. I've always loved blue herons. They're so patient, which is not a strong suit of mine. So I need to be more like a great blue heron in that way. From the book of Job in the Bible, it says, "But ask now the beasts, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall tell thee. Or speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee, and the fishes of the sea shall declare unto thee. Who knoweth not in all these that the hand of the Lord hath wrought this?" And so there's, I think, going out and watching wildlife, you can learn from it. Some herons. A blue preacher flew toward this. Sorry. A blue preacher flew toward the swamp in slow motion. On the leafy banks, an old Chinese poet, hunched in the white gown of his wings, was waiting. The water was the kind of dark silk that has silver lines shot through it when it is touched by the wind, or is splashed upward in a small, quick flower by the life beneath it. The preacher made his difficult landing, his skirts up around his knees. The poet's eyes flared, just as a poet's eyes are said to do when the poet is awakened from the forest of meditation. It was summer. It was only a few moments past the sun's rising, which meant that the whole long, sweet day lay before them. They greeted each other, rumpling their gowns for an instant and then smoothing them. They entered the water, and instantly 2 more herons, equally as beautiful, joined them and stood just beneath them in the black, polished water where they fished all day. Some Herons by Mary Oliver. Here's one called September. I walk through a grove of pines and startle the nighthawk from the limb where it has been lying, resting or sleeping. The bird is similar in color to the gray limb and lies along, not across it, so it's almost invisible. On its hawk-like wings, it rises into the sky and vanishes. The nighthawk doesn't nest here, but only stops a few days on its long travels. I know this one must be tired of flight, and I'm sorry to have disturbed it. The next day, walking the same woods, I approach with care. The bird is again resting on the limb, its eyes shut. I back away and do not disturb it. The following year, almost to the day, I enter the pine woods and remember the nighthawk just in time to be cautious and silent. And the bird is there, in the same tree, on the same limb, in the pine woods that is so pretty and so restful, apparently, to both of us. September by Mary Oliver. Here is Crow. This will be our last Mary Oliver piece. We'll move on to somebody else. Crow. Every morning, Crow steps along the beach as though he found the world brand new and wonderful and without a doubt made specially for him. The eiders stare. The black ducks are busy with their own affairs as he marches along the rack line on his sturdy feet to the bounty of stranded sea worms, crabs, abandoned bags of popcorn. Oh, yes, his big black beak seems to say, this is good. Here's breakfast and lunch both. And as for dinner, I'll be back. What a good world. I wish we could be friends, but when he sees me, daring to look at him, he opens his strong arms that are dressed always in the darkest ribbons and floats off, but only a little way, and he's down again on the sandy track. And who has yet seen anything cleaner, bolder, more gleaming, more certain of its philosophy than the eye he turns back? Crow by Mary Oliver. All right, here's John Keats. Here's a little, the opening to Endymion, which is just a paragraph. Endymion's super long, but this is just a few lines. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases. It will never pass into nothingness, but still will keep a bower quiet for us, and a sleep full of sweet dreams and health and quiet breathing. Therefore, on every morrow are we wreathing a flowery band to bind us to the earth, spite of despondence, of the inhuman dearth of bold natures, of the gloomy days, of all the unhealthy and o'er-darkened ways made for our searching. Yes, in spite of all, some shape of beauty moves away the pall from our dark spirits. Such the sun, the moon, trees, old and young, sprouting a shady boon for simple sheep, and such are daffodils with the green world they live in, and clear rills that themselves that for themselves a cooling covert make against the hot season. It's from Endymion by John Keats. It is, spooky season, so I like reading like Edgar Allan Poe, and I just read a short story by H.P. Lovecraft called um, uh, Dagon. So if you like short stories, check out my YouTube, and I have a lot of poetry there too. Link in my bio, link or on the short stories playlist, depending on where you're seeing this. And yeah, check out Dagon if you like creepy short stories. It's by H.P. Lovecraft, and he mentions Poe in there, which is interesting, even though it was first published in 1919. Joshua V. Love your content. Thanks, Joshua. I appreciate that. You reading for submissions? You mean like if somebody emails me, would I read it? And the answer to that would be quite possibly. I have done it before, if it's appropriate, etc. on a live. Yeah, my email is check my link tree. My email ought to be in there, and that's in my bio. So yeah, I always like reading people's original work. So let's see, who are we gonna read? Let's read some. Let's see what we got here. Let's read a Robert Frost piece. Robert Frost. This one is Acquainted with the Night by Robert Frost. I have been one acquainted with the night. I have walked out in rain and back in rain. I have outwalked the furthest city light. I have looked down the saddest city lane. I have passed by the watchman on his beat and dropped my eyes, unwilling to explain. I have stood still and stopped the sound of feet when far away an interrupted cry came over houses from another street. But not to call me back or say goodbye. And further still, at an unearthly height, one luminary clock against the sky proclaimed the time was neither wrong nor right. I have been one acquainted with the night. Here is Dust of Snow by Robert Frost. The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. Dust of Snow. Book Bunny, you are very welcome. I appreciate that. That's it's a great handle, Book Bunny. I like that. Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Fire and Ice. The Flower Boat, Robert Frost. One of his very early ones. The fisherman swapping a yarn for a yarn under the hand of the village barber. And here in the angle of house and barn, his deep-sea dory has found a harbor. At anchor she rides the sunny sod, as full to the gunwale of flowers growing as she ever turned her homeward cod from George's bank when winds were blowing. And I judge from that Elysian freight that all they ask is rougher weather, and dory and master will sail by fate to seek for the happy isles together. The Flower Boat by Robert Frost. Nothing gold can stay. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down today. Nothing gold can stay. Robert Frost. The Pasture by Robert Frost. My name is Hare, and okay. That's a great play on words, and that's super cool. Super cool. The Pasture by Robert Frost. I'm going out to clean the pasture spring. I'll only stop to rake the leaves away and wait to watch the water clear I may. I shan't be long. You come too. I'm going out to fetch the little calf that's standing by the mother. It's so young, it totters when she licks it with her tongue. I shan't be gone long. You come too. I like that one. Excuse me. The Woodpile by Robert Frost. Out walking in the frozen swamp one gray day, I paused and said, I will turn back from here. No, I will go on further, and we shall see. The hard snow held me, save where now and then one foot went through. The view was all in lines, straight up and down of tall, slim trees, too much alike to mark or name a place, by so to say for certain I was here or somewhere else. I was just far from home. A small bird flew before me. He was careful to put a tree between us when he lighted, and say no word to tell me who he was, who was so foolish as to think what he thought. He thought that I was after him for a feather, the white one in his tail, like one who takes everything said as personal to himself. One flight out sideways would have undeceived him. And then there was a pile of wood for which I forgot him and let his little fear carry him off the way I might have gone, without so much as wishing him good night. He went behind it to make his last stand. It was a cord of maple, cut and split and piled and measured 4 by 4 by 8, and not another like it could I see. No runner tracks in this year's snow looped near it. It was older, sure, than this year's cutting, or even last year's or the years before. The wood was gray, and the bark warping off it, and the pile somewhat sunken. Clematis had wound strings round and round it like a bundle. What held it, though, on one side was a tree, still growing, and on one a stake and prop, these latter about to fall. I thought that only someone who lived in turning to fresh tasks could so forget his handiwork on which he spent himself, the labor of his axe, and leave it there, far from a useful fireplace to warm the frozen swamp as best it could, with the slow, smokeless burning of decay. Harriet, I haven't seen you in here in a while. How's it going? Harriet is a poet and and yet doesn't like to read her work out loud, which is a real shame. It's a real shame. How's the club, the poetry club going well? I certainly hope so. Joy, what's the first name? Vampire by Cawain. In the meantime, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost, one of his very well-known ones and one of my favorites. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. I read it live in person, not on the internet. Oh, mm, so fancy. Well, I live out in the woods, so the internet's all I got, toots. But that would be fun. That truly would be fun to do a live reading. I've never done a live reading um, in like I mean, I'll do it with like if I'm in a uh, audio drama or something like that. If I'm reading and there's I'm zooming with somebody or I'm in a studio with a director, I might it's live in that respect, but not like at a coffee shop on poetry night sort of a deal. That sounds like a lot of fun. So if you want to hear Harriet read her poetry, you got to, get ye to New Zealand. Last time I got paid in supermarket gift vouchers, so it ain't super fancy. That's better than I'm doing. I get nothing but thumbs up and attaboys, which I love, and I thank you for each and every one of them. But like, I'm not getting supermarket gift vouchers. I would totally go to a live reading if you put one on. If we do a road trip to Mississippi, would you? Yes, of course I would. Yes, of course I would. Um, Kristen, what's going on? Good to see you. Kristen is another one. She does a lot of her stuff is lip syncing, and I want to hear her do some poetry because she's great. I mean, you're a great actor. And I want to hear you read some poetry. Um, so let's see. I think I've been meaning to do this one. T.S. Eliot, The Hollow Men. I'm actually going to record this one so I can put it on my podcast and on YouTube on my like as a main video. T.S. Eliot. If you like T.S. Eliot, because not everybody does. Not everybody likes every poet. But if you like T.S. Eliot, I would love to hear what your favorite poem of his is. I can get my recorder to turn on. Sorry for the distraction here. Okay. I love hearing other people, read poetry. You know what I mean? I read Book Bunny, "Road Trip, do it." There's actually some super cool little places. I'm in a very small town near, it's actually Tennessee Williams, the playwright, his hometown, right? And there's a couple super cool places that if there's ever a poetry reading, I already know where we'll do it. We could even do it at his house, like, it's a visitor center now, and it's a museum, and you they would that's the kinda stuff they would do. That would be cool, wouldn't that be cool? Tennessee, do a poetry reading um, in Tennessee Williams' parlor. Would buy you a coffee and pass the offering pie. This is sounding better and better. Yes, I sort of took a trimmer, it didn't when I was in the Army, I got all shaved out. I don't like to shave my face slick anymore because 'cause I've just for over 8 years of my life, every morning, I shaved it like a baby, smooth, and I got tired of that, and I kinda have sensitive skin, so I was always felt like I was breaking out somewhere because of that. So after I got out of the Army, I was like, "I ain't doing that ever again, probably." But it was a substantial trim. Harriet, okay, well, you will be in South Dakota, and that's not technically near, but we could do it organize a Black Hills, like, poetry reading or something. Um, Also, speaking of the Black Hills, I have been in con if you're familiar with the history of the Old West at all, or even if you're not, most people have heard of Sitting Bull, the great, Lakota war chief Sitting Bull. Uh, if you are if you don't know who he is and you're from outside the United States, that is forgivable. If you are an American, shame on you if you don't know who Sitting Bull is. Anyway, his great-great-grandson, who was a Vietnam vet, um, he's an elderly man himself now, but he has agreed to be on my podcast, and we're still trying to find a date to do it. So I'm hoping it works out. But I read his book, his great-grandson's, um, biography of his grandfather. It's called, Sitting Bull: His Life and Legacy. I read it, loved it, and so I'm gonna try to interview him about his book and maybe read an excerpt for us, and I think it would be cool if I can work this out. I wanna, um, um, do a live, like a TikTok live while we're recording it with Sitting Bull's great-grandson. Um, and anyway, Harriet, he is from, um, like, the Black Hills area, so where you will be, that's Lakota country, and, you'll be right up there. Fort Riley, yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, Fort Riley Historical Society president, yeah, yeah, you know, uh, more about Sitting Bull than probably the vast majority of people. Husband's ready to stop shaving, he gets out in April. That's awesome. Yeah, that's how it goes. You're just ready to, um yeah, when you get out, it's kind of like when you have to shave all the time, when you don't have to anymore, you wanna exercise that freedom. You've been fighting for freedom for others, and now, you wanna sort of exercise it yourself. Um, so anyway. Oh, a history symposium and that would be wonderful. I would love that. That'd be wonderful to just come and, like, see that. And yeah, the Black Hills is definitely, sacred land and stuff like that, and, the history, the I mean, there's a lot of tragic history associated with it, but I think anyone needs to, would do well to read about it. There's a lot of stuff. It's not all good. It's not good stuff necessarily, but it's a lot to learn about. Please do inbox me. Please do. I would love to hear more about that. Kristen, yes, I'm glad to hear that you are gonna do that or do a reading. Um, okay, let's do a poem. What do we say? The Hollow Men by T.S. Eliot, perhaps? All right. The Hollow Men by T.S. Eliot. We are the hollow men. We are the stuffed men, leaning together, headpiece filled with straw. Alas, our dried voices, when we whisper together, are quiet and meaningless as wind in dry grass or rats' feet over broken glass in our dry cellar. Excuse me. Shape without form, shade without color, paralyzed force, gesture without motion. Those who have crossed with direct eyes to death's other kingdom remember us, if at all, not as lost, violent souls, but only as the hollow men, the stuffed men. Eyes I dare not meet in dreams, in death's dream kingdom. These do not appear. There, the eyes are sunlight on a broken column. There is a tree swinging, and voices are in the wind singing, more distant and more solemn than a fading star. Let me be no nearer in death's dream kingdom. Let me also wear such deliberate disguises, rat's coat, crow skin, crossed staves in a field, behaving as the wind behaves, no nearer, not that final meeting in the twilight kingdom. This is the dead land. This is cactus land. Here the stone images are raised. Here they receive the supplication of a dead man's hand under the twinkle of a fading star. Is it like this in death's other kingdom, waking alone at the hour when we are trembling with tenderness, lips that would kiss form prayers to broken stone? The eyes are not here. There are no eyes here in this valley of dying stars, in this hollow valley, this broken jaw of our lost kingdoms. In this last of meeting places, we grope together and avoid speech, gathered on this beach of the tumid river, sightless, unless the eyes reappear as the perpetual star, multifoliate rose of death's twilight kingdom, the hope only of empty men. Here we go round the prickly pear, prickly pear, prickly pear. Here we go round the prickly pear at 5 o'clock in the morning. Between the idea and the reality, between the motion and the act, falls the shadow, for thine is the kingdom. Between the conception and the creation, between the emotion and the response, falls the shadow. Life is very long. Between the desire and the spasm, between the potency and the existence, between the essence and the descent, falls the shadow. For thine is the kingdom. For thine is, life is. For thine is this is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper. T.S. Eliot, The Hollow Men. And here is a favorite poem of mine, from a more modern poet, Charles Bukowski. I like this because it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like me. I feel I connect with it, um, just because I don't know. I was a soldier, and then I was in, factory and all this kind of stuff, and so I always had sort of a sense of propriety about, how you have to act a certain way with, professionalism and decorum and things like that. But then sometimes performing, it doesn't call for that. You need to open up a little bit, be, loosey goosey, baby. And this is, I don't know, I like this poem. It's called Bluebird by Charles Bukowski. There's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out, but I'm too tough for him. I say, stay in there. I'm not going to let anybody see you. There's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out, but I pour whiskey on him and inhale cigarette smoke, and the whores and the bartenders and the grocery clerks never know that he's in there. I don't hang out with whores, by the way. I don't identify with that part. There's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out, but I'm too tough for him. I say, stay down. Do you want to mess me up? Do you want to screw up the works? Do you want me to blow my book sales in Europe? There's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out, but I'm too clever. I only let him out at night sometimes when everybody's asleep. I say, I know you're in there, so don't be sad. Then I put him back. But he's singing a little in there. I haven't quite let him die. And we sleep together like that with our secret pact. And it's nice enough to make a man weep, but I don't weep. Do you? Isn't that good? Charles Bukowski, Bluebird. Thank you. Thank you. And one of the things that I like about, you know, YouTube Live, TikTok Live, you know, being live with people that like poetry is I can let my little bluebird out. I can sort of let it out and pet it a little bit, feed it little bird seeds out of my hand. So, thank you. And it's like I can let the little bluebird out of his cage. BW, I grew old, shall I wear my trousers rolled? I'm not sure what you mean by that. That is a very clever line, but I'm not familiar with it. I remember one time you quite literally had yeah, I did. I had, it was a, silver-laced Wyandotte chicken, and, she and her sisters are all grown up now. Haven't started laying yet, but they're much bigger. And that is, I'm glad this definitely is a place for bluebirds. This is a little bluebird, place where you can if you like poetry, so do I. Concord Hymn by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Scarecrow, Denver. Okay, I can check that out for sure. Yeah, Concord Hymn. By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled. Here once the embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard round the world. The foe long since in silence slept, alike the conqueror's silence sleeps, and time the ruined bridge has swept down the dark stream which seaward creeps. On this green bank, by this soft stream, we set today a vote of stone, that memory may their deed redeem, when like our sires, our sons are gone. Spirit that hath made those heroes dare to die and leave their children free, bid time and nature gently spare the shaft we raise to them and thee. Conquered him. That was at the read or sung at the the um, battle monument commemoration or dedication or whatever in 1837, because it, the battle took place on Ralph Waldo Emerson's, I think his grandfather's property or something like that. So he had kind of a personal connection with the first um, battle of the American Revolution. And I really like historical stuff. So I love poetry, classic poetry. I also love sort of classic American documents. So if you um, if you like, or you're interested in hearing like the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution of the United States just narrated, I have done that, and it's on my YouTube channel. I have a playlist of American like documents from our history, and those are two of the things in there. Yeah, the Transcendentalists. So anyway, most people do not care about that kind of thing. Most people don't know what people are quick to say, well, that's unconstitutional. So and so is against our Constitution, and yet they don't even know what's in our Constitution. Most people, they might have read it once in high school, but they don't know. And so I think it's good for people to listen to the document that gives you your rights and talks about where they come from and things like that. And if you're not from the United States, that can help. That can help you understand the curious American mind a little better, right? And so, anywho, that's on YouTube if you're ever interested, because I just like stuff like that. And also Thomas Paine's American Crisis, Part 1 I've done. He had some more parts, but I've done Part 1. That's really good. He was a British guy that, really threw in with the American cause and did a lot of writing to sort of stir people up before the revolution. A treaty that our modern country is built on, and most people, it's really sad that a lot of people, wherever they may be from, don't know their own founding documents. I think it's good to at least be somewhat familiar with them. What amendment to the U.S. Constitution gave women the right to vote, or recognized a woman's right to vote, I should say. What amendment to the Constitution recognizes the right of a person to defend themselves? What amendment recognizes a person's right to express their mind sincerely, to gather for a peaceful redress of grievances against the government? Well, if you read the Constitution, you understand those kinds of things. And not to get political, but reading someone's founding documents, that is not, in America, we have Republicans and Democrats, and those are the two big parties. Although there's a lot of smaller ones, those are the two that sort of run things. And Bill of Rights, absolutely. Yeah, I've got most of that kind of stuff on my playlist. Anyway, that I wouldn't say it's really not even political, because political is like Republican or Democrat or whatever party, the Labor Party, or whatever. Just recognizing your rights, that's not political. That's just being a human. Anyway, back to some poetry. Where were we? Here's I like this one because there's a lot of good advice in here, kind of life advice. And I like poems that do that. Kind of like Rudyard Kipling's If. I really like that one. Has some great advice in it. This one has some great advice. And it is called uh, Desiderata Words for Life by Max Ehrman. Exactly. If you understand your country's own documents, you just have a better idea and be less manipulated by whatever media outlet wants to get you all wound up within one or two sentences because you don't know anything. Okay, Desiderata Words for Life by Max Ehrman. Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain and bitter. For always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not bind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Especially do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love. For in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune, but do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful. Strive to be happy. Desiderata, Max Ehrman. I like that one. Thank you, thank you. Glad you enjoyed that. Glad you enjoyed that. That's it. That's so good. I mean, there's just so much in there. Let's see. Langston Hughes, Catch. Big Boy came carrying a mermaid on his shoulders, and the mermaid had her tail curved beneath his arm. Being a fisher boy, he'd found a fish to carry. half fish, half girl to marry. Catch by Langston Hughes. Mm, Hangle, honey, what's going on? I am glad you came in here tonight. Great to see you. Uh, Daybreak in Alabama. This is my favorite Langston Hughes poem. Now, I'm up in Mississippi, right next to Alabama. We share a very long border, and so this could as easily be written about Mississippi as Alabama. Just we have, Deep South, a lot of the same problems and a lot of the same racial tensions and that sort of thing from, the um, from our past. And so he wrote it where it rhymes with Alabama, but it could just as easily be written about where I'm from. So I love this poem, Daybreak in Alabama by Langston Hughes. When I get to be a colored composer, I'm going to write me some music about daybreak in Alabama, and I'm going to put the prettiest songs in it, rising out of the ground like a swamp mist and falling out of heaven like soft dew. I'm going to put some tall trees in it, and the scent of pine needles, and the smell of red clay after rain, and long red necks, and poppy-colored faces, and big brown arms, and field daisy eyes of black and white black people. And I'm going to put some white hands, and brown and yellow hands, and red clay earth hands in it, touching everybody with kind fingers, touching each other natural as dew in that dawn of music when I get to be a colored composer and write about daybreak in Alabama. I love when a poem does a full circle like that. So it kind of starts and ends on the same idea. I think that's so cool. And he does this beautifully in this poem. I just love the ideas of unity and that kind of thing in this one. Uh, it really, I don't know. I just love it for that reason. When I was in the army, I was in Iraq, and we had this meeting. It was in Mosul, Iraq, and we had this little officers meeting each morning with the unit I was in, and it was sort of we had several different units there together. There were these two. I was a lieutenant, a first lieutenant at the time. Well, there were two African American officers from Chicago, and one was a lieutenant colonel, and one was a captain. And I would, after this meeting, would walk down to the chow hall to get some breakfast. And absolutely, uh, dragonflies and dandelions, my pleasure. So I would walk down to the chow hall, maybe a quarter mile away, half a mile away, and these two gentlemen, two African American officers, um, and when I'm telling a story, I do not think a person's the color of their skin means a hoot of difference, unless it it helps you understand the story better. That's the only reason I'm mentioning the color of their skin. They're U.S. Army officers, right? So I would walk. Well, since they were higher ranking, they had procured a truck, so they would get in their truck and drive down there. Well, after a couple days of passing me, one day they pulled over and was like, "Hey, Lieutenant, you want to hop in? We know you're going to Chow. That's where we're going too. You want to hop in with us?" So that kind of became our little routine. We'd go to the meeting. We'd all three walk out to there. We would drive down to the Chow Hall, get some breakfast, and we'd come back. So we did this for a couple weeks. And one day, as we were driving back, there was a captain which if you're not familiar with Army ranks, captain is higher than lieutenant. So I was the lowest ranking guy, had a captain and a lieutenant colonel. And the lieutenant colonel, the highest ranking gentleman in the vehicle, said, "Hey, Lieutenant Phillips, we got a question. We've been talking and we're kind of curious, and I hope you won't take offense to this, but what could we ask you a kind of a personal question?" And I said, "Oh yeah, yes sir, sure." They said, you're from Mississippi, aren't you?" And I said, "Oh yes sir, sure do, I sure am." And they were like, "Born and raised? Ever lived anywhere else?" "Oh no sir, born and raised in the swamp. That's where I'm from, Mississippi." And they're both, like I said, from Chicago. And they said, "Well, uh, no offense intended, but you don't seem to have any problem hanging out with us, eating with us and, riding around with us." And I was, "Oh, no, no, sir." I knew where this was going, but I feigned ignorance. "Oh, no, sir. It's real nice to, higher ranking than me. I appreciate the time you're taking up with me." Like, and, and he was like, "So you don't mind just hanging out with black guys?" And I said, "Oh, no, sir." And I told him about my upbringing, and my dad told me when I was a little boy. I didn't even know what he meant at the time, but someone, I think it was in a movie actually, had said the N word, right? And my dad said, "Son, that is a very disrespectful way of talking about somebody, and I don't ever want to hear you say that. And if I ever hear you say that word about somebody, I'm gonna spank you." So I never said that word growing up, and I knew I'd get spanked by my dad if I did. So that was never a part of my vocabulary. I don't even, as Theo Vaughn would say, I don't even use that word in heavy traffic. You know what I mean? Like when I'm stressed out, like I just don't use that word. And, anyway, the I like Daybreak in Alabama, but yeah, I got to be good friends with those guys, and they thought that was pretty cool that I'd actually been raised that way. Um, let's see if we got Harriet. Thanks for joining. Have a great night. Be good. That's right. Yep, I'm thankful for my dad. I think, you know, racism is different, definitely a learned, taught behavior, and I'm glad that my dad, um, he wasn't having that. All right, let's see what else we got. Let's do another. We got time for another one. Yeah, thanks. It was a good memory. It was a good memory, and also the since the lieutenant colonel, and I don't even remember his name. I remember looking him up. We kept in touch for a while, but this has been years, 13, 14 years since we've talked. But um, when we were in Mosul, since he was an officer, he could bring more stuff. He had this huge library that he had brought to Iraq with him, and so he would let me come. He would say, if let's keep it to like 3 books, but you know, come and get you 3 books, and when you read them, you can come back and get um, you can get 3 more. So I would, when I was in Iraq, I would read the books, and then, "Sir, I finished these 3. Could I come and get some more?" So kind of like Belle and Beauty and the Beast. So I would go. He'd go in there and take me to his office, and I'd okay, well, I'll take this one. And so anyway, he had a great library. That was another thing I loved about that guy. Let's see. He was the library in Iraq. Um, he was my library. He brought not just books, a lot of books. A lot of books. He was a well-read man. He had he had tons. I'm speaking somewhat relatively because we were 10,000 miles from home and that sort of thing. But, most guys get sort of a space ration. Like, you can bring a bag of stuff, you can bring this Foot Locker, and then that's about it. Since he's a lieutenant colonel, he's got you know, more freedom, so he brought tons of books. Um, any other favorite poems based in the South? I'm trying to think right off. I don't know. A lot of Langston Hughes. He's from Missouri, but he still spoke to a lot of the experiences that you see in the Deep South. Absolutely. Um, Charles Bukowski. Yeah, I think we could do some more. Let's do another Charles Bukowski, one that's not too dirty. Okay, so this is that's great. That's the way to go. Now he didn't have 2,000 books, but he probably had a good 500. And for where we were, that's that's about 500 more than most people brought. But he had a good full wall, which he had more than I didn't read all his books, obviously, in the 6 months I was in close proximity to him. All right, so let's see. Here is the difference between a bad poet and a good one is luck. Monster, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. I'm going to censor this slightly, as there's some, profanity and such. If you want to read it, the completely uncensored version, why look up the difference between a bad poet and a good one is luck by Charles Bukowski. It goes like this. I suppose so. I was living in an attic in Philadelphia. It became very hot in the summer, so I stayed in the bars. I didn't have any money, and so I went with what was almost left. I put a small ad in the paper and said I was a writer looking for work, which was a lie. I was a writer looking for a little time and a little food and some attic rent. A couple days later, when I finally came home from somewhere, the landlady said, "There's somebody looking for you." And I said, "There must be some mistake." She said, "No, it was a writer, and he said he wanted you to help him write a history book." "Oh, fine," I said. And I knew with that I had another week's rent. On the cuff. So I sat around drinking wine on credit and watching the hot pigeons suffer and screw on my hot roof. I turned the radio on real loud, drank the wine, and wondered how I could make a history book interesting but true. But the guy never came back, and so I had to finally sign on with a railroad track gang going west. And they gave us cans of food, but no openers. And we broke the cans against the seats and sides of the railroad cars, 100 years old with dust. The food wasn't cooked, and the water tasted like candle wick. And I leaped off into a clump of brush somewhere in Texas, all green with nice looking houses in the distance. I found a park, slept all night. Then they found me and put me in a cell. And they asked me about murders and robberies. They wanted me to get a lot of stuff off the books to prove their innocence. But I wasn't that tired, and they drove me to the next big town 57 miles away. The The big one kicked me in the ass and they drove off. But I lucked it. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in the office of the city hall, half asleep in the sun like the big fly on my elbow. And now and then she took me down to a meeting of the council, and I listened very gravely, as if I knew what was happening, as if I knew how the funds of this town were being dismantled. Later, I went to bed and woke up with teeth marks all over me, and I said, "Watch it, baby. You might give me cancer." And I'm rewriting the history of the Crimean War. And they all came to her house, all the cowboys, fat, dull, and covered with dust, and we all shook hands. I had on a pair of old blue jeans, and they said, "Oh, you're a writer, huh?" And I said, "Well, some think so, and some still think so. Others, of course, haven't quite wised up yet." 2 weeks later, they ran me out of town. Charles Bukowski. The difference between a bad poet and a good one is luck. All right. Well, I think I'm going to get going this evening. I appreciate you swinging by, and good to hang out with people that like poetry. So, anyway, have a great one, and see you soon. Our friends from TikTok are gone. I'll do another poem, maybe. Let's see. I'll do one more. Do a classic. Let's maybe some Lord Tennyson. Let's try The Miller's Daughter by Alfred Lord Tennyson. It is the miller's daughter, and she is grown so dear, that I would be the jewel that trembles at her ear. For hidden ringlets day and night, I'd touch her neck so warm and white, and I would be the girdle about her dainty, dainty waist, and her heart would beat against me in sorrow and in rest, and I should know if it beat right. I'd clasp it round so close and tight, and I would be the necklace, and all day long to fall and rise on her balmy bosom with her laughter or her sighs, and I would be so light, I scarce should be unclasped at night. The Miller's Daughter by Lord Tennyson. Here's another Lord Tennyson. You ask me why, though ill at ease. You ask me why, though ill at ease, within this region I subsist, whose spirits falter in the dust and languish for the purple seas. It is the land that freemen till, that sober-suited freedom chose, the land where girt with friends or foes, a man may speak the thing he dwell, a land of settled government, a land of just and old renown, where freedom slowly broadens down from precedent to precedent, where faction seldom gathers head, and by degrees to fullness wrought, the strength of some diffusive thought hath time and space to work and spread. Should banded unions persecute opinion and induce a time when single thought is civil crime, and individual freedom mute, though power should make from land to land the name of Britain trebly great, though every channel of the state should fill and choke with golden sand, yet waft me from the harbor mouth, wild wind, I seek a warmer sky, and I will seek before I die the palms and temples of the South. Lord Tennyson, you ask me why, though ill at ease. One of my favorite Lord Tennyson poems is called "The Eagle." It reminds me of being on the river, um, the Yilpam River in coastal North Carolina, and fishing with my grandpa. And a lot of times in these cypress trees, and usually it's a dead cypress tree, there'll be a nest and there'll be an osprey. The ospreys live up there, which is a, very, very eagle-like. It's a raptor. And they'll come and they'll fly over the river, and then all of a sudden they'll just drop into it with a splash and they'll come out with a fish. It's really cool to watch. So this poem called "The Eagle" by Alfred Lord Tennyson takes me back to coastal North Carolina, fishing with Grandpa. The Eagle by Alfred Lord Tennyson. He clasps the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun in lonely lands. Ringed with the azure world he stands, the wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt he falls. Short and sweet. All right. So tonight we've read a lot of modern stuff. Bukowski. We've read T.S. Eliot. Now I want to go back and do some older stuff. Do a little Shakespeare. A couple of his sonnets. They're short and sweet, and the musicality of Shakespeare is unsurpassed. It's interesting. The year the King James Bible was published. It came out May 2nd, 1611. 1 week later, A Winter's Tale started performing at the Globe. And then in November, The Tempest began performing at the Globe. So, the King James Bible and Shakespeare were really representative of just the zenith of the English language. And so I really like Shakespeare just because he explains things just so well. He describes the human condition and things like that. Okay. So trying to get my little pad. Give me some trouble here. So please be patient with me. Come on, little pad. Well, oh, here we go. I'm not gonna worry about my pad. So this is number 2, sonnet number 2. When 40 winters shall besiege thy brow, and dig deep trenches in thy beauty's field, thy youth's proud livery so gazed on now will be a tattered weed of small worth held. Then being asked where all thy beauty lies, where all the treasure of thy lusty days, to say within thine own deep sunken eyes were an all-eating shame and thriftless praise. How much more praise deserved thy beauty's use, if thou couldst answer, this fair child of mine shall sum my count and make my old excuse, proving his beauty by succession thine. This were to be new made when thou art old, and see thy blood warm when thou feelst it cold. Sonnet number 3. Look in thy glass, and tell the face thou viewest. Now is the time that face should form another, whose fresh repair, if thou If now thou not renewest, thou dost beguile the world, unbless some mother. For where is she so fair, whose uneared womb disdains the tillage of thy husbandry? Or who is he so fond will be the tomb of his self-love, to stop posterity? Thou art thy mother's glass, and she in thee calls back the lovely April of her prime. So thou through windows of thine age shalt see wrinkles, despite of wrinkles, this thy golden time. But if thou live, remembered not to be, die single, and thine image dies with thee. Here's a 130. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with faults compare. $130. And here is 116, one that's pretty well known. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out, even to the edge of doom. If this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. It's 112. Your love and pity doth the impression fill, which vulgar scandal stamped upon my brow. For what care I who calls me well or ill? So you or green my bad, my good allow. You are my all the world, and I must strive to know my shames and praise from your tongue. None else to me, nor I to none alive, that my steeled sense or changes right or wrong. In so profound abysm I throw all care of others' voices, that my adder's sense to critic and to flatterer stopped are. Mark how with my neglect I do dispense. You are so strongly in my purpose bred, that all the world besides, methinks, are dead. Here is another of my favorites, 29, Sonnet 29. Actually, 19, then 29. Inanna, what's going on? Good to see you. Devouring time, blunt thou the lion's paws, and make the earth devour in her own sweet brood. Pluck the keen teeth from the fierce tiger's jaws, and burn the long-lived phoenix in her blood. Make glad in sorry seasons as thou fleest, and do whate'er thou wilt, swift-footed time, to the wide world and all her fading sweets. But I forbid thee one most heinous crime. O carve not with thy hours my love's fair brow, nor draw no lines there with thine antique pen. Him in thy course untainted do allow, for beauty's pattern to succeeding men. Yet do thy worst, old time, despite thy wrong, my love shall in my verse ever live young. Okay, so now 29. Let's see. Okay, sonnet 29. When in disgrace, with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art, that man's, with what I most enjoy, contented least. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. And number 18, sonnet number 18, another very popular, well-known one. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Oh, how much more doth beauty beauteous seem, by that sweet ornament which truth doth give. The rose looks fair, but fairer we it deem for that sweet odor which doth in it live. The canker blooms have full as deep a dye as the perfumed tincture of the roses, hang on such thorns, and play as wantonly when summer's breath their masked buds discloses. But for their virtues only and their show, they live unwooed and unrespected fade, die to themselves. Sweet roses do not so. Of their sweet breath, of their sweet deaths, are sweetest odors made. And so of you, beauteous and lovely youth, when that shall fade, by verse distills your truth. Yeah, so there's some Shakespeare sonnets. Let's see. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, Shakespeare sonnets are so good for memorizing, so good for your mind. Uh, Speaking of love, how about Robert Burns, the old Scottish poet? A Red, Red Rose. There's a lot of love poems out there. I don't think it gets better than this. It might get as good as this, But I don't suppose a love poem can get better than this for sheer sincerity and beauty. A Red, Red Rose by Robert Burns. Oh, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. So fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till all the sea's gone dry. Till all the sea's gone dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun, and I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. And fare thee well, my only love, and fare thee well awhile, and I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 mile. Uh, so just won second place at the Shakespeare competition. That's so cool. What did he perform? Was he in a production, or was it a recitation or a performance of a monologue kind of a thing? That's so cool. He did a sing playing King Richard. Very cool. That's so that's awesome. That well, I'm excited for him and for y'all. That is wonderful. Uh, let's do another poem or so. If anybody has a request, by all means. But if not, I will do something from the 19th century. I did a lot of modern stuff tonight, so kind of want to do some 19th century. Mm, Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Sonnets from the Portuguese, number 14. If thou must love me, let it be for naught except for love's sake only. Do not say, I love her for her smile, her look, her way of speaking gently, for a trick of thought that falls in well with mine, and certes brought a sense of pleasant ease on such a day. For these things in themselves, beloved, may be changed, or change for thee, and love so wrought may be unwrought so. Neither love me for thine own dear pities wiping my cheeks dry. A creature might forget to weep who bore thy comfort long, and lose thy love thereby. But love me for love's sake, that evermore thou mayest love on through love's eternity. And then sonnets from the Portuguese, number 43. I don't know, maybe this is her best known one, I'm not sure. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach, when feeling out of sight for the ends of being in ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need, by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely, as men strive for right. I love thee purely, as they turn from praise. I love thee with the passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with a love I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. And if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death. We can do from Song of Myself, Walt Whitman. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air, born here of parents, born here from parents the same and their parents the same. I, now 37 years old in perfect health, begin hoping to cease not till death. Creeds and schools and abeyance, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor for good or bad. I permit to speak at every hazard. Nature without check, with original energy. Houses and rooms are full of perfumes. The shelves are crowded with perfumes. I breathe the fragrance myself and know it and like it. The distillation would intoxicate me also, but I shall not let it. The atmosphere is not a perfume. It has no taste of the distillation. It is odorless. It is for my mouth forever. I am in love with it. I will go to the bank by the wood and become undisguised and naked. I am mad for it to be in contact with me. The smoke of my own breath, echoes, ripples, buzzed whispers, love root, silk thread, crotch and vine, my respiration and inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood and air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and of the shore and dark-colored sea rocks, and of hay in the barn, the sound of the belched words of my voice loose to the eddies of the wind, a few light kisses, a few embraces, a reaching around of arms, the play of shine and shade on the trees as the supple boughs wag, the delight alone or in the rush of the streets or along the fields and hillsides, the feeling of health, the full noon trill, the song of me rising from bed and meeting the sun. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get to the meaning of poems? Obviously, that's a really long one, but there we go. So I've been on here quite a little while. I think I'm going to get going. I need to do a recording before turning in. But it was wonderful hanging out, and hope you have a good one. And I will talk to you soon.